It's me again, and we're here with another country for the day. So yeah, here we go with it. As yeah, we're on Ukraine today. And yeah, here we go. Starting off with history as usual. As in the 7th century BC, people called the Scythians lived in what is now Ukraine. So kind of could say recorded history started then. And later the Greeks settled on the north coast of the Black Sea, and they founded city-states there, and the Slavs settled Ukraine in like the 5th and 6th centuries AD. First notable country that doesn't include Romans. So yeah. And then from the 9th century, the Swedish Vikings sailed along the rivers into the heart of Eastern Europe, and some of them settled in what is now Ukraine. And in 1882, a Viking named Oleg captured Kiev and became capital of a powerful state. And in 988, under Vladimir I, Ukraine was converted to Christianity. But in the 11th and 12th centuries, the state broke up into fragments, and this disaster struck in the 1240s when the Mongols, led by Batu, grandson of Genghis Khan, conquered the southern and eastern Ukraine. However, north and western Ukraine remained independent until the 14th century, when it was taken on by the Poles and Lithuanians. Poles we've touched on, Lithuanians we're coming up to shortly in the next couple of days, and they gradually drove back the Mongols and Tatars. But however, the Tatars were still held Crimea, and in the 15th century they came under the domination of the Turkish Empire. And in the 15th and 16th century, some of the Serbs ran away from the Polish landlords and settled on the steppes of Ukraine, and they were called Kozaki or Cossacks, which means free men. And the Cossacks formed self-governing communities, and eventually they united to form the Cossack Hetmanate, or led by a hetman or general. But in the late 17th century, Poland came to dominate western Ukraine, while Russia dominated the eastern Ukraine. And in the 18th century, Catherine the Great, Empress of Russia, was determined to absorb eastern Ukraine into Russia, and the Cossack Hetmanate was abolished in 1764. Meanwhile, in the 18th century, Poland was declining, and from 1772 to 1795, Russia and Austria decided to help themselves to Polish territory, and most of western Ukraine was taken by Russia, except for a small strip in the far west, which went to Austria. And finally, in 1783, Russia conquered the Crimea, and Catherine the Great also founded Odessa. And in the mid-19th century, Ukraine was firmly under Russian control. But from the mid-19th century, nationalism began to spread, and in 1918, while the Russians were engaged in a civil war, Ukraine became independent for a brief time. But in 1921, the Russians forced Ukraine to become a part of the Soviet Union, and decided that farms in Ukraine should be collectivized. In other words, peasants would be deprived of the land and livestock, and made to work as farm labourers on land now owned by the state. Not surprisingly, many Ukrainian independent peasants bitterly resisted even slaughtering on their own livestock rather than hand it over to the state. But Stalin was determined to crush the Ukrainian peasants, and he caused the terrible famine of 1932-1933 that took the lives of a couple of million innocent people. And in 1932, collective farms were given completely unrealistic quotas to fill, as Soviet law decreed that the peasants would not be allowed to keep any grains until they met their quotas, and they could not, and of course met them, so Soviet officials simply confiscated all the grain they wanted, leaving the peasants to starve. And it's not exactly known how many people died from the man-made famine, but estimates put it around 7 million. And the famine is also called Holodomor, but Ukraine's suffering was not over as during 1937 to 1939, Stalin unleashed the purges, which meant that many Ukrainians were executed or sent to prison camps. And then in 1941 the Germans invaded, and who also murdered many Ukrainians. But by 1943 the Germans were losing the war, and the Red Army recaptured Kiev on the 6th of November 1943. And Stalin took reprisals against anyone who was suspected of being disloyal or collaborating with the Germans, and all the Crimean Tatars were essentially deported. And in 1986 there was a disaster at the nuclear power plant at Chernobyl, as it went quiet for a couple of decades, and the authorities tried to cover it, and it caused cover it up, but there was much resentment. And in the late 1980s, Ukrainians became increasingly dissatisfied with the rule from Moscow, and in 1989 the RUKH, Ukrainian People's Movement for Restructuring, was formed, and in 1919 demonstrations were held. And with the collapse of communism and the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991, Ukraine once more became independent. But the transition from socialism to capitalism was seen as a painful one, as Ukraine had soon suffered high inflation and an economic decline for some years. But the economic growth did eventually come back, and the transition from dictatorship to democracy did not go all too smoothly. And in late 2004, Viktor Yanukovych won the presidential election. However, many people believe the election was rigged, and the supporters of the other candidate, Viktor Yushchenko, held demonstrations for 10 days, and eventually a turn was held and Yushchenko was elected, and he became president in early 2005, and it was called the Orange Revolution. And Ukraine suffered badly from an economic downturn of 2008 to 2009, but was temporary, and then they were able to recover. And in 2012-2014, a wave of demonstrations swept across Ukraine when President Yanukovych rejected any association treaty with the EU. And in February 2014, the Ukrainian Parliament voted to remove Yanukovych from power. And after the new elections, Petro Poroshenko became president of Ukraine, and the population stands somewhere around 44 million. Now moving on to the language, as a vast majority of people in Ukraine speak Ukrainian, which is written in a form of a Cyrillic alphabet, and the language belongs with the Russian and Belarusian to the East Slavic branch of the Slavic language family. It's closely related to Russian, but also has direct similarities to the Polish language. And significant numbers of people in the country can speak Polish, Yiddish, Russian, Belarusian, Romanian, or Moldovan. Bulgarian, Crimean, Turkish, or Hungarian. And Russian is probably one of the more important minority languages, knowing kind of like the political situation a little bit. And during the rule of Imperial Russia and then under the Soviet Union, Russian was a common language of government, administration and public life in Ukraine, and although Ukraine has been afforded equal status with Russian in the decade following the revolution of 1917, by the 1930s a concerted attempt at Russification was underway, and in 1989 Ukrainian once again became the country's official language, and its status of sole official language was confirmed in the 1996 Ukrainian Constitution, and in 2012 a law was passed that granted local authorities the power to confer official status upon minority languages, and although the Ukrainian has been reaffirmed as country's official language, regional administrations could elect to conduct official business in the prevailing language of the area, and in the Crimea, which has an autonomous status within Ukraine at the point of the article written. And where there is Russian-speaking majority, Russian and the Crimea Tatar are the official languages, and in addition, primary and secondary schools using Russian as a language of instruction still prevail in the Donetsk Basin and other areas with large Russian minorities, and the Ukrainian Parliament moved to rescind the minority language law in February 2014 after the ouster of pro-Russian press Viktor Yanukovych, but interim press Alexander Turchinova declined to sign the bill into law. And yeah, moving on to legends, as I'm kind of focusing on the more medieval castles today, as medieval castles have plentiful in kind of like the Ukrainian territory, and serve as a vivid illustration of it, and I reckon can be said to be attractive sites in the country, as they are age-old fortifications, complexes which are mostly concentrated in more western region, and attracts not only with their architecture and interesting history but energy properties, but also the kaleidoscopes of legends. So yeah, I'm going over 5 of them. So the first is Uzhgorod Castle, Uzhgorod. As Uzhgorod Castle is one of the oldest in the Ukraine, and is tightly connected with the Hungarian magnates of the Druget family, who owned the castle for more than 4 centuries, and the fortress became truly impregnable and acquired its most famous legend during their rule. As the story goes, once upon a time, a Polish voivode decided to conquer the Uzhgorod castle, and he made an incognito visit to the city and got to know Count Druget's daughter, who was renowned for extraordinary beauty, and she had lost her mind because her love to the stranger and told him all the castle's secrets. And when her father found out about his daughter's betrayal, he ordered her to immure her alive in a fortress wall and to rescue the voivode. And according to the legend, the girl's soul wanders around the citadel's corridor, seeking salvation ever since then. Then there's Palnok Castle in Mukachevo. As Palnok Castle of Mukachevo has kind of 2 legends for guests and all, and one of them is connected to the 85-meter deep well, which can be seen as the country of the medieval castle even now. And it's said that the well was dug for a long time, but water failed to appear in it, and then the devil came to the castle's owner, Prince Fedor Karyatovich, who offered a deal, watering a well in exchange for a sack of gold. Having no choice, the prince agreed, and he was in financial straits. Thrudin decided to use cunning, and he gave a small sack with 2 coins to the devil, and it begs the devil grabbing money and jumping into the well. And it said that he offered a howl offended howl can still be heard there today. And another from Parnock's castle is still kind of popular today, is tightly connected with the name of the Countess Ilana Zerini. He was in charge of Mukachevo's castle's defense during the siege by Austrian troops, and once during the attack by the enemy. On the western slopes, the Countess, who, in addition to her extraordinary courage, was famous for her rare beauty, coming out on the bastion of the fortress, surrounded by her loyal soldiers, and the Austrian general, who was preparing his troops to another siege, saw the charming Srini, became stunned, and he ordered to stop the attack, saying that he won't fight against such a beauty. So yeah, her beauty kind of saved the day, if it's real or not. And there's Kremenetz Castle in Kremenetz, and it's built in the time of the Kievan Rus. The Kremenetz Castle is known as the only fortress that survived the onslaught of Mongol invaders in 1240. Well, when the people mentioned it, they usually think not about the facts, but about the unusual personality of the wife of Poland's king, Sigismund I. Then in Politan princess Bona Sforza, who owned the castle for 20 years, and then it is with her that the multitude of Kremenetz castles legends are connected, as the most widespread one claims that Bona Sforza hid her treasures in the Samkova mountain, and every year on Easter her ghost wanders among the fortress ruins. And it's said that whoever dares to kiss the father's ghost will be able to take the key and the treasure chamber from her lips. But remember, the door opens with the first stroke of Easter bell and closes with the last one, and if one does not come out in time, the ghost will claim this unlucky person for her own. Yeah. Then there's Lubart Castle from Lutsk, and which is the same as any other decent medieval fortress, as Lutsk Castle has its own legends, and moreover it is one of the oldest castles in Ukraine and in all of Europe as a whole. As one of the legends tells the story of a Lithuanian prince called Lubart. He was a citadel's owner, and he was in the tragic love of a beautiful Oksana, who did not love him back, and the prince ordered to imprison the defiant girl in one of the castle's towers, and to keep her there until she agreed to marry her. After another denial from Oksana, he ordered his soldiers to kill the rebellious beauty, and since then Oksana's ghost has been seen in the castle on several occasions, and it's said that the girl's soul will rest in peace only when she recovers her ring, which was taken by one of the killers and sold on the market. Then there's Ostrov Castle, and is like the last one we're going to go through, as the best known legend of Ostrov Castle is connected with Princess Galishka of Ostrov. It was considered to be the most beautiful, smart and noble fiancée in Eastern Europe of her time, and her uncle Vasily Konstantin gave her in marriage to his relative, a powerful magnate who held office of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania against the girl's will, and during the wedding ceremony, which took place on the Epiphany Cathedral storm suddenly began, and bells started to ring disturbingly. Candles and oil lamps went out, and the priest who conducted the ceremony saw it as a bad sign and wanted to stop, but Prince Vasily Constantin insisted on continue. Having become the wife of a man she did not love, Gashka jumped from the balcony that night, and she didn't die though. And the wind picked up the girl, and her ghost is said to wander around the premises of Ostrov Castle on a moonlit night ever since. So yeah, I'm sad. So yeah, that is the video today, and I'll see you all very soon for the news now. I had to think for a moment, so yeah, I'll see you all very soon, and yeah, bye for now.